Well, hello everybody, and welcome to Not Quite the Witching Hour with me, Thomas Sheridan. I've got another guest today, the second one, and it's my friend Olivia from Germany, Olivia Sol. Now, I've known Olivia for quite a while now. I was a fan of her music and her band, and we became mates. And she's in possession of some knowledge that I find bewildering, and I truly do. I mean, I've studied a lot of different things, and I have been very neglectful to my shame with the arcane science of astrology. Now, I don't know why. There was nothing against it. I didn't have a problem with it, and I just only so much I could fit inside my head. So today, I'm going to enter this conversation with Olivia as an astrology nothing. Like I never even heard of the word until tonight. And she is going to educate me and you on why we should care about astrology and what it can do for us in our lives. So it must be do a lot for us because a lot of people are into it. So how are you, Olivia? And thank you for coming on the show.
I'm great, and thank you so much for having me.
Oh no, no, no. I wanted to do this for a while. It was just that the timing and everything. This is perfect. So listen, okay. Just I know you just tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you live in Germany. Give us a little more information.
Well, I'm originally from Romania. I'm a mix of Slavic, Germanic, whatever. So I was born in Romania, came to Germany at age 6, and I've lived here since then. And I studied music originally. Yeah, I just love music. I love singing very, very, very much. I've always had an interest in astrology, but more like passing. I
Right.
didn't really get into it because I didn't know where to start. All I saw was the online stuff, and I'm a 80s baby and 90s teenager, so I was only exposed to books and not the internet. This came much, much later. And the books that I read, the very few ones, they were all new agey and just didn't resonate with me. I just felt okay, I'm supposed to be two-faced and shallow and jump from one boyfriend to the next because I happen to be a Gemini. Weird. This doesn't match my personality whatsoever. I'm kind of too loyal for my own good, unfortunately. I used to be. And quite thin-skinned when I was very young, so I didn't just callously drop people nilly-willy, quite the opposite. And it just didn't resonate. Some did, and some positive and negative stuff did resonate, but mostly it was overblown, too much negative, and it just didn't match my personality at all. And also the other signs, they're like, I mean, stupidly simplistic, if you're being honest. The normal horoscopes are nonsense. They don't predict anything. They can't because they're too generalized and they can't possibly be apt for everybody. They don't even generalize the psychic weather, so to speak, the general weather, the astrological weather. They don't even do that because New Age astrology is so lacking in so many ways. And that's why I was just never really on board with it, even though I did have an instinctive interest in it. I wanted to learn more, but I just didn't know where or how. So I kind of dropped it, didn't really, read anything much anymore and just, oh yeah, whatever. So I pursued music and realized, okay, the music industry and me, we don't match. We just don't mesh well. So yeah, I'm a teacher. I'm a voice teacher. I absolutely love this job very, very much. So I'm happy that I studied music after all, despite not being the next whatever. It's okay. It's fine. I just do music for my own creative pursuits and endeavors, and that's the best and healthiest way for me personally. So yeah, I came across Fiona at some point. First of all, I came across you. I don't even know how that happened, but it happened, and I'm so glad it did because I came across one of your videos, and then I watched another one, and yeah, I just gained tremendous respect for you. Also, especially with the 2020 event, you, to be blunt, saved my ass during that time. So Yeah. And through you, I came across Fiona Edgar. And that's how I finally started to really spark a genuine and lasting interest in astrology and not astrology, you know. So through her, I learned so much, and I eventually took a course. I took two courses with her, a beginner and then an intermediate course, because I thought, okay, this is what I want to learn. This is what I truly want to know about and utilize for myself. And I took to it like ducks to water, not to toot my own horn or anything. It just resonated so deeply. There's a lot that I don't resonate with out there in the world, but astrology definitely clicked for me. Uh, yeah, so through her, I learned about classical Western astrology.
What is classical Western astrology then? What is it?
Well, to put it simply, it's a system that is oriented at the sun's yearly travel through the 12 signs of the zodiac. Those are 30 degrees, counting from 0 degrees to 29 degrees for each sign, along the path of the sun, which is called the ecliptic. And Western astrology is strictly oriented at this ecliptic clock, if you will. And it has absolutely nothing to do with the stars, the constellations, which do have the same name. There's a constellation called Taurus and Gemini and all of that, but it's not the same as the zodiac signs. So you have different stars within each constellation. You have the so-called fixed stars, and they do move according to the precession. That's why people say, "Oh, the zodiac isn't in line, isn't aligned with the stars." So if I say Gemini again because I happen to know that I'm a Taurus in Vedic astrology. However, because it is oriented at the position of the stars and not the Western system, so we are oriented at the point in which the sun happens to be along the ecliptic at the moment that you are born.
Okay.
And it has nothing whatsoever to do with the constellations. That is like a frame outside of our little, clock, if you will, or calendar. Little, it's not little, but we see it as a closed system that is totally independent of the fixed star. So therefore, no sign is out of alignment, as they call it. Fiona has mentioned this several times, so I'm basically just paraphrasing her at this point. But she's dead on. It's totally different, and that's what the TikTok tribe, I would call it, doesn't understand, or some of them don't understand it, and they spout nonsense about astrology. Oh, it's not aligned anyway, and it's all nonsense, it's all bullshit. And NASA also says that, but they should know better. So just saying.
So, so your astrological life is time stamped the moment you're born in relationship to the sun. Now, what would be that relationship to the sun, where the Earth is in space, or something like that?
Uh, well, the the traditional astrology is kind of not egocentric. I'm sorry, what's it called? Geocentric, but kind of egocentric too, because you're projecting from your own, person, and you see
Right.
yourself. So yeah, but it's in a good way. So it's geocentric. So the Earth is kind of observing what happens around it, if you will. So you're standing inside your own chart, so to speak, and looking at what's going on. And it's really a snapshot of the moment when you were born, the planetary positions, the down to the degrees and minutes, exact snapshot. So you can delineate according to the old view of astrology, which is very much linked to natural philosophy as opposed to reductionist materialistic science.
Right.
So along the lines of natural philosophy, you kind of imbue the planets and the luminaries, sun and moon, with yeah, attributes that are aligned with deities. So the sun is a deity, but when we look at the sun in your birth chart, we don't look at Ra or whatever, or Apollo. We see the sun, but it has the attributes that are given to the solar gods. And so it's the same with the other planets as well. Venus represents the goddess of love, and therefore represents and embodies her qualities. So yeah, you don't venerate the planets as gods, you see them as some sort of representatives. This is also something that Fiona has mentioned. So this is the best way to say it. The planets are like the image or something representing the gods, but each planet has their own characteristics, their own nature, their own shadow and light, if you will. And along the lines of where these planets, let's say, whichever you choose, where they are situated in your birth chart within this snapshot, according to their personalities and attributes and nature and natural affinities, likes and dislikes. For example, the sun isn't, and each planet isn't always happy in each and every zodiac sign, because the zodiac signs have their own nature as well. So some signs don't agree with some planets or the sun and the moon. So depending on where these different factors are, you get a very unique snapshot. And that's also something that a lot of people don't realize, how unique your own birth chart really is. Because in order for another person to have the exact same chart, you would have to be born in the same place and at the same time, in the same second, even.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought that up because one of the things that put me off people would cite astrology was this like notion of kind of predestination, like there was almost like pre-crime, like oh I can't help it, I'm a Scorpio, oh I'm such a pain in the ass, I'm a Virgo and all this stuff, and it was almost like a way of to me of kind of like absolving themselves of personal responsibility. What I like about you and Fiona is that you say no, this is on your ass, and you're not fated to anything. You now, I get that. I get that. We'll all have a different path. But even if the people are probably born in the same second in the same place, there'll probably be still subtle differences and choices and things like that. But why? Okay, why do people? And this is more of like a psychological question. Why do people love to invoke their star sign as a kind of a get out card, or also an attribute?
Because I think it's the easiest way to label themselves and to maybe make themselves feel special when their sign happens to be very popular. For example, Leo is super popular because Leo is, I mean, imagine a lion, how glorious and gorgeous is a lion, so the image, and of course the sun rules the zodiac sign Leo, and everyone is, oh my God, oh, Leo is awesome. Of course, there's the negative side, and depending on which comment section you're in, you're either going to get lambasted or you're going to get praised. But I can tell you that my sign happens to be one of the most unpopular ever, along with my ascendant. Thank you so much. And I get it. I get it. When you overblow the negatives, you can do that with men and women. That's the easiest thing, and it's being done day in, day out. When you overblow the negatives, you get a distorted image. Yes, you can absolutely get a psychopathic Gemini. Of course, you can get a total nut job Scorpio. I have personally encountered women with Scorpio sun who were more than once who were absolute nut jobs. But that doesn't mean that I walk around calling each and every Scorpio, something, something. I don't do that because you have to prove yourself first. You have to take accountability for your own flaws and not put them on your sign. It just happens to be that the sun was at this degrees of this sign when I was born. So what?
Yeah.
If I'm a fickle person, like, Gemini is called very fickle and illoyal and whatever, then that is on me. Then I have a problem with maturity, with accountability, with, facing myself. And yeah, so it's also is something to do with maturity in general. With, a lot of young people are very fickle and don't know what they want. And they could be Taurus, they could be Libra, they could be anything. It's nonsense to call everybody, or Aries, for example. Aries is always referred to as very extroverted, super extroverted, like a boss bitch. But that's not true at all. Not true. I personally know very introverted Aries people, because their ascendant is in a sign, for example, that is introverted. What
Okay.
if
Let's,
sorry, yeah.
I don't want to interrupt you, but next, explain terminology. What does ascendant mean? I don't know.
Okay, okay, all right. So the ascendant is actually highly important, because it is the sign that was rising on the eastern horizon on in the moment that you were born. So snapshot wise, it tells you which sign was rising as you were born in the east.
So, okay, so
And
that would be a constellation now, a zodiac constellation.
that is a zodiac. Uh, that is the degree. It's measured by degree,
In the
and
29.
in the within those 30 degrees, from 0
Yeah.
to 29 degrees, your ascendant could be, anywhere. And it's like stopping a mechanical clock. Boom, there it is. Okay, 29 degrees Taurus. What does that mean? That means that your ascendant, your outward appearance, the lens, if you will, the goggles through which you observe the world, or the filter, is extremely powerfully colored by the attributes and the nature and the character of Taurus. Because at 29 degrees, it's like absorbing all the energy. I actually hate that word, but I just say the energy of the sign, or the atmosphere, if you will, of the sign. It's like scooping up the entire sign. Depending on which degree you're in, the energy of that sign is more or less pronounced.
Is it more pronounced
So
if it's all the way up or all the way down?
all the way up to the 29th degree. The 29th degree
That's the
is
most
called,
powerful point.
right, it's called anoretic, not anorectic, but anoretic degree, and that is the most intense degree. So no matter where in the sign you are with your sun, your whatever, that is the sign that kind of rules over the nature of this object within this sign. But yeah, the gesticulation is very Gemini, by the way. But yeah, 29 degrees is the most intense. So that's when you really have kind of soaked up all the energy of that sign. Yeah.
That's how that, that is very interesting because it's like the clock striking 12 and then it goes back to, the new sign. Now we know, we'd say like, okay, you were born under a certain time of year, under a certain ascendant. Say your ascendant was, I don't know, Virgo or something. How have they quantified this? Is this from past study that they've actually discovered that, they've, is it built on centuries of study kind of thing?
Well, yeah, it's actually, astrology is so ancient, we don't truly know where it comes from. I mean, the conventional wisdom says, yeah, it's the Babylonians, but we don't know where they got it from. I mean, don't tell me they just sprang out of nothing with a completely perfected system. They would have perfected the system over who knows how many generations, and it is based on observation, I guess. Observation differently. I said, I guess, because it's probably very much different. Most likely, it's very much different from the way we see things, because they didn't have the same science as we did. It was a different age. Now, those ages like, Kali Yuga and whatever, those big cycles, people think differently in a different cycle. So when you're in a higher age than this one, you think differently. You think in terms of what we would call spirituality, I think, or a more holistic notion of the human body and the connection to humans, the connection to, between humans, between human souls, and also the maybe journey of the soul through different lifetimes and the gods. So everything was different, and the astrology, that the actual astrology that we speak about today, is very, very much in this spirit of natural philosophy, and also kind of being more in tune with a bygone age that we no longer have, unfortunately, as we can all see when we open our eyes. And that's also indicative of the age that we are in, that astrology is being relegated to the Hausfrau psychology. It originally was never, ever used for these purposes. It wasn't used to make fun of people or put them in categories or use your attributes from your sign. Oh, I'm a Libra, I can't help it. I just don't
Yeah,
cry. I don't,
that
I
all,
don't.
that all started in the 60s. You don't see any references to those things in movies or newspaper articles from before, like the hippie days. It literally
Yeah.
manifested right there and then in that the whole hippie culture.
Yeah, and all this bullshit about cosmic portals opening. There is no such thing. What cosmic portal? Where is it? Show me where it is. I can say that the, I don't know, square between this and that planet that is just a mathematical, angle. Square is um, 45 degrees angle. So you can, sorry, 90 degrees. Sorry. See, I'm bad at math. I suck at it because I have Mercury in Gemini. No. But yeah, so I can see astrology in the sense that I know what is happening, but I don't have any reference, any frame of reference, anything whatsoever, for this cosmic portal opening business. And it is a business.
What do you mean,
It's
like
a
those?
racket.
What do you mean, a cosmic portal, like these lions gates and all these things?
Yeah, and that is
I,
total
I don't
total
even know what that
nonsense.
is. I just see it like mentioned.
Yeah, okay, the Lionsgate, that is actually super interesting because it did not appear before. I think I read it somewhere before 2010. There were like three mentions, three searches or something, in on average. Um, and there is a Lionsgate, and I don't know where. It is an actual gate in former, I don't know, Syria or whatever, in a former empire. But the Lion's Gate in the sky somewhere is loosely, I say loosely and falsely, based on the heliacal rising of the star Sirius, the dog star Sirius. Heliacal rising means where the day when a star is visible on the eastern horizon at sunrise. That's when you see Sirius. And that was actually the day when the ancient Egyptians knew, okay, that marks the yearly flooding of the Nile.
Right.
And it was sometime in, yeah, August, but never the 8th of August. Because the modern Lionsgate is positioned on August 8th. Why? Because the New Age nutters love numerology, which they don't understand either. So 88 is like, oh my God, angel number. 11, 11, 8, 8, or 888, 222, whatever, oh, Jesus. So yeah, and so this has nothing to do with 88 because the heliacal rising of Sirius is actually never on August 8th. So the whole notion is nonsense.
Terminology check. When people use the expression when they're writing or reading a chart for someone, you have such and such a planet in the third house. What is a house?
Okay, a house is also a mathematical division, also based upon, you can base it upon the formula through which you calculate it, because there are different house systems. That's where it gets confusing. And there is, a house is actually meant to represent an area of life. So the first house is meant to be the first impression that people have of you, the physical appearance, your ego, if you will, your how you go out into the world. The second house is about money, the money that you personally make through income, and so on and so forth. So each sign has their own life area that it is representing. There are different house systems. Please don't ask me how exactly they came up with those. I don't know. Those were very smart people, and I'm sure they have their own reasoning. But I use the Placidus system because this seems to be the one that is actually the most reliable to me in my practice. There are others who use the whole house system. There is a bit of a debate whether the whole house system, which means that one house is equally as big as the other houses. So you divide it like a pizza in 12 equal pieces, whereas the Placidus system can result in a 12th house being like this and a first house like this. So some prefer other systems. There is actually a German astrologer named Reinhold Ebertin who says the whole house system is garbage. I don't use it, and that's fine, because what he says is valid too. So there are different approaches for different astrologers, and there are different methodologies. And when I bash the New Age, which I believe it rightfully deserves, uh, I wouldn't dream of bashing other astrologer systems as long as they work, and as long as their clients are happy, and as long as they work with integrity. But the New Age just doesn't have any integrity in my book at all. And it is not based upon real, understanding of astrology. That's my issue with it. If you called it New Age poppycock or something, or astro garbage, I wouldn't mind, but don't call it astrology, because it isn't. It's something else. It is some sort of astral, I don't know, planet psychology or something like that, but it's not astrology. And I'm not somebody who says you must absolutely study along this system or else. No, but you should at least know it and then be competent. And no, not one single New Age astrology book or person, or not naming any, of course, but not one single one of them has ever made an accurate prediction. I would rather call it assessment than prediction, because again, in our Kali Yuga, predictions are being degraded to the, what do you call it? The gypsy in the tent, so fortune telling. So that's not it. It's more like assessments and understanding how the weather is going to affect a certain endeavor or undertaking, which is actually the traditional way that the ancient civilizations regarded astrology. There were kings and military leaders and super important big shots who relied on astrologers to give them accurate assessments and predictions, in the sense that, my lord, it is unwise if thee goest and declarest war on that day, because Mars is yada yada. So the planetary positions were also used as portents for, or omens for, success or failure in, let's say, military operations or whatever. So that was the original use of astrology, and it had nothing to do with lions gates and portals and abundance mindsets and whatever. It had nothing to do with that. It was all about seeing what the weather is like, so that you know whether you go out in wearing flip-flops or you need an umbrella or whatever. So What I also find very, very interesting, to say the least, is the notion that astrology is superstition. And superstition, of course, means it has no value, it has no measurable effect, it has no benefit. It's just like a lazy mindset. Oh, I'm superstitious, black cat is bad luck, and so forth. But there is no evidence for it. And that is what I don't understand. Why on earth would emperors who have riches we can't even imagine, Trump times 10 in ancient times, why would those guys rely on superstition that has no basis for what they need and what they want? Because it's tit for tat with these
The
people
stakes, the
then and
stakes would,
now.
yeah, the stakes would be too high. Then there's lots of documentation from ancient Rome of emperors in general talking about we don't deal with superstition. The priests and their predictions are okay for morale the troops and so on, but it's not the ultimate thing. And what you were saying about the person who doesn't do the house system, I can kind of get a lot of that stuff. That refinement is kind of like a natural process in this thing. From my own stuff at the tarot. Now, I found eventually that I came up with a system of 7 cards. Less than that was too little, and more than that was too much. And so you have some of these spreads of 30 cards in them. Sure, that's nearly half the deck. You could come up with any convolution you wanted from that. So there's a load of that in the tarot as well. I see it all the time. Like someone was doing a reading for me not too long ago, and then he said, "Let me do it," and it was like 20 odd cards. I said, "That's impossible. Like you could literally do anything with that. And refinement. I totally get that there is a constant refinement element to it. Now, one more thing. What you're describing, and you kept using it. I love that expression, natural philosopher, because I like to think of myself as being a natural philosopher. That it's very pagan, the way you're describing it. It's very
Yeah.
locked into natural cycles. It's very locked into cosmic cycles and cycles of consciousness. We got on this section is what, 5 minutes left. Can you give me a five? I'm gonna come on the back on the other side. Can you give me a 5 minute thingy about the linkage between paganism and classical Western astrology?
Yes, of course, because classical Western astrology is, as I said earlier, based on the sun's path, and the sun's path is marked by 4 cardinal points, which, are the solstices and equinoxes. And the spring equinox marks when the sun enters the sign Aries. 0 degrees Aries, boom, spring equinox. On that day, you have those pagan festivals on those important cardinal feasts, I would say, feast days. And of course, you have others too. And those are also historically linked to certain, positions. But the beginning of spring, let's keep it there. For the sake of this example, the beginning of spring is marked when the sun is entering the sign Aries. That's when fertility rites were going on. That's where everything is in full bloom, or rather springing into bloom. And it's finally the death of winter is finally broken. The darkness of winter is gone. So there you have this element of going forward, of initiating a new season, initiating something, breaking out of restrictions, or the dead of winter, as I said earlier. And this is represented by the sign Aries. Aries is the cardinal fire sign. Fire, the fire that ignites new growth, the fire that ignites passion, be it creative, sexual, which is kind of the same thing, more or less, being in every area of life, there is like a new breath of passion, and the will to grow, the will to finally come through the soil and just spring into action, be it a plant or be it a person. I started my astrology business on the spring equinox in 2023 exactly for that reason, because it did feel like breaking out of something old and stale and calcified, so to speak. So there are analogies, very, very clear analogies between, let's say, those points, those cardinal points, and the astrological placements. But also, of course, speaking of the pagan gods, as I mentioned earlier, you do have the planetary positions, and the planets, I mean, who are positioned in your chart, or whichever chart you look at, and they are like the embodiments of the gods. So you have the god Mars, for example, you have the god Jupiter, and you look at what do these gods do? What are they? How do they play a role? And when the god of war is on the horizon, you know what's up, for example. And then you have the gods, or the planets, as representatives of the gods ruling over the signs. So for example, with the Aries example, with the Aries sign, you have Mars ruling it. Why? Mars, virility, masculinity, fire, passion, a big fat phallus, but it's the fertility of nature itself. And astrology is oriented at nature itself, because each sign also represents a specific season, or let's say an in-between season. For example, everyone's favorite Gemini is described as inconsistent. Why? Because the genius New Agers have literally translated the season into which Gemini falls to mean a person's character. Gemini is what? Early summer, before the heat of the summer sets in, before summer truly settles, which means the weather is a bit unsteady. You have those crazy winds, you have those crazy, changes from minute to minute. You have a change in the weather, and that was translated, genius as they are, to a person's personality. Just like Aries, that I also mentioned earlier. Every Aries is supposed to be, horns through the wall. I don't care. Me. And that's not the case at all. So anyway, nature. It's all about nature. The seasons are marked, or the signs mark the seasons. It's like a mirroring. And the old saying, as above, so below, is incredibly apt for astrology.
Brilliant. We'll come back on the other side. Jack Parsons got me on the moon. Jack Parsons got me on the moon. Okay, Olivia. Now, you're a professional astrologer. People pay you to do their horoscopes and to do their charts for them. Not surprising, unbelievably knowledgeable, and obviously very a diligent and precise person. Now, I would imagine if I was an astrologer, and I do this, one of the reasons I don't do tarot reading, well, I mean, I do, but I mean, one reason I'm not crazy about it is that I know a lot of people get nervous just before I do. They're afraid I'm going to say something or pull out a card that may worry them and stuff, this kind of thing. But like yourself, I always say, no, this is not destiny. This is like help. It's like advice, really. Your life's in your hands. What is the Someone comes up to you and they say, Olivia, will you do my chart for me? Is there a kind of a psychological element to that and how you deal with them?
Yes. First of all, you absolutely have to be honest. But in some cases, it's better to not mention something when it's, for example, too traumatic or whatever, when the person isn't ready for it. I personally did not haven't had such a case though, but I would imagine if that there was something that might translate though. I had a client, I think 2 years ago, and this client had a very sick family member,
Yeah.
and the family member passed away. And I saw in the person's chart, not the family member's chart, I had no idea, but in the specific client's chart, that their family member, you can actually see if it's the mother or the father, because the planets or luminaries represent the mother, which is the moon, and the father, which is Saturn or the sun. But anyway, not to digress, I saw in that person's chart that there is some crisis coming up involving the moon. Um, so yeah, and that female family member of that client did pass away. I did not say that the person would pass away, though. I said it's a crisis, a looming crisis. So watch out for that. And it happened. Uh, it's nothing I want to boast about because it's
Mm.
obviously terribly sad. So, but if let's say somebody wanted to, to make a trip somewhere, to take a trip, I would see if that trip was under good or bad stars, so to speak. I would see if that would be a good idea to do that or not. And then I would warn the person if I saw something that pertains to a propensity for accidents, for example, or something. Yes, I would say that very bluntly and very clearly. Or financial stuff. Don't take the risk. Don't buy the shit coin, stuff like that. I would be blunt about it, absolutely. And you have to be as a professional
Yeah.
astrologer. You can't be beating around the bush, but sometimes you have to word things very carefully, and not every client takes your information equally. Some of them, let's imagine the absurd scenario that a raging lefty wanted their birth chart read. So you would have to be very careful not to offend them. No, of course not. You have to be respectful, because this person takes their money, which translates to energy, and gives it to you. So there is a trust implied there, also a respect for you as a professional. And you, on the other hand, have respect, hopefully, for the client and hopefully for your craft. Otherwise, do something else, please, for the sake of the clients. The craft doesn't care, but the clients care, and you take their money and their time. And you also take time out of your life and try to contribute something of worth, of value. You're not saving little children out of burning houses, but you do something for a person that might actually make their lives better or help them understand something. And that is valuable, and you have to have respect for that too. So you take on a responsibility, not just for the competence with which you work, but also for the person's well-being. And you should always aim to perform, or to give the best, to the best of your knowledge. So this is how I approach it, but always with the intent of being sincere with them, because they deserve that and they need it. And I can't not say something if I see it. I just can't. I might do that with a normie, or somebody in the workplace or whatever. Or I might tell a student, oh, wow, you have a lot of potential there, instead of saying, well, that was off key, you know. So don't hurt people, because you're not helping anybody if you do that.
Now, someone comes to you for a reading, a chart, and they say, Olivia, what do I need to bring with me other than their date of birth? What else do you need?
I need the place of birth, and if they have it, the time of birth. And there's one thing that I would like to mention, because my ascendant is so nitpicky and meticulous. It's Virgo. Um, it forces me to mention that, which is the ascendant can only be calculated, and so can the houses, if you have the exact or exact-ish birth time. So a client doesn't need to know that. If they don't know it, I can work without the houses, without the ascendant, no problem. I did that plenty. It's very much doable and very accurate. But if you have it, that is definitely an added bonus and gives more depth to the analysis.
Well,
So birth,
nearly everyone will have
yeah.
it because it's on their birth certificate.
Yeah, I mean, some people have it and some people don't have it, and uh, you know, sometimes as an astrologer, you're asked to help determine the birth time, at least approximately, and
Right.
you can actually do that. There's a method for that, but it's
Work, like,
very,
how would you do that? Like working backwards or something like
yeah,
that?
kind of you kind of reverse engineer
Yeah,
a
yeah,
little bit.
that sounds makes a lot of sense actually. You could do it. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely, you can, and I did that. I did that for what's his face? Keith Raniere, the I don't know if you know it, if you know him, or if you read the article that I wrote. I think I wrote it in April or something. He's a cult leader currently in jail where he belongs, and he is a horrible person, and he terribly abusive and whatnot. And I tried to determine his ascendant. And how did I do that? I mean, his birth time, aka ascendant, and how did I do that? I kind of yeah, tried to time. No, I used the timing of extremely important events, for example, his arrest, um, to narrow down where he could be ascendant wise, but I also used the characteristics of the zodiac signs. Now you have to be really careful about that, and you have to be non-shallow about it, because if you go with the shallow version, you're not getting anywhere. Um, so I determined his very likely ascendant through basically also his physical features and his demeanor, how he acts towards people, how he sees the world. And for somebody who is so eloquent and self-centered, and it's all about him, and when he talks, you can see how he thinks. And so I literally reverse engineered the whole thing. And I believe, and another astrologer whose opinion I very much value because he's very competent, he agreed with me. He said, well, totally makes sense for him to be a Scorpio ascendant. Totally. So yeah. Um, so reverse engineering through techniques and a little bit of intuition, but intuition, or a little more, but intuition based upon study, not just, random. Oh, he's manipulative. That means he has to be an air sign. No. Why? I've known a Taurus who was unbelievably manipulative. So no, not at all. You have to go deeper than that.
yeah. Like John, no, I'm a Libra, and I think I typically am a Libra if I just like go by the stereotype of that. There's a lot of those things I am, you know. But so is John Lennon, and John Lennon
Mm.
could be a really nasty person. He's a wife beater and other things as well. So again, like you said, it's particulars within it, you know.
Yeah, I actually looked at John Lennon's chart a while ago. I don't know when exactly that was, but a good while ago. And yeah, oh, no, no. He wasn't the peace-loving flower child whatsoever, and he was a person who very much was used to the attention of women, and um, kind of used women. Uh, yeah, and I didn't know much about his biography.
No,
I don't really like the Beatles. I
no,
never have.
I don't.
As a kid, never resonated with them at all. But I didn't know much about him other than those, important landmarks that everybody knows who has a TV or had a TV at some point. But I saw in his chart that he had a sort of unconventional relationship with his mother. And yeah, he wasn't even raised by his mother. So
Yeah.
I saw that despite not knowing the biographical details. So yeah.
Yeah, it's true because his son Julian said that like he had love for everyone else except me. His own son, this kind and his mother. So I mean, yeah, he was definitely a strange. I mean, he didn't deserve to get shot or anything. That was pretty bad. But so there's an interesting conundrum dilemma there. Someone comes along with a chart and it indicates this person is not a particularly nice individual. The purpose of the reading is, and tell me if I'm wrong, of the chart is for them to make themselves a better person. Is that true?
Yes, if they want to.
Yeah.
The main motto is know thyself.
Yeah.
And the chart depending on what type of extras you use. For example, some people use the fixed stars. They work with the Western system, but they also look at the fixed stars. Where was star XYZ when that person was born? What does this mean? Fiona does that. I don't. I work with the Arabic parts. There is a whole long ass explanation what they are on my Substack, so people can read that in case they're interested. If not, I don't want to bore them with that now, but it's just an extra that you can use to look into more depth, more detail. But you want to help the person understand themselves better, where they might be subconsciously following patterns that they just can't really see through. Could be past life related. If people don't resonate with that concept, then I would say, yeah, well, deeply psychological stuff. Look at it however you want, but it is deep stuff and it will affect you in your lifetime if you don't address it. And how can you address it when you don't really become conscious of it? So becoming conscious of certain dynamics and certain motivations and maybe even hidden drives or things that you wouldn't really want to admit to yourself. Maybe somebody has, I don't know, a sexual kink. I wouldn't say, okay, you're into this and that. I don't care. I don't know. But it's visible when somebody, let's say, is a bit
Yeah, excuse me while
deviating.
I put on my gloves. But
Yeah, let's say when somebody is
I shake your hand.
into,
Yeah.
is motivated by stuff that deviates from vanilla ice cream. Okay, so I can actually see that, but I wouldn't say, oh, you're a daddy dom. Okay, I wouldn't say that, of course,
Wouldn't
but I would.
you wouldn't I know it's none of your business really.
It's none of my business, and I'm not here to call people out, and I'm not here to judge them at
Yeah.
all. I'm here to help them. For example, painful childhood stuff that is a cliche, but it is a very, very valid one. Painful childhood stuff, for example, not being nurtured enough by the mother and therefore seeking partnerships that are toxic, or the father or something, seeking partnerships that are toxic and where you basically land in the same scenario over and over. That is something that I would see as extremely crucial to point out and to say, okay, you, it looks like you haven't experienced affection or love or validation from, let's say, the mother, um, and therefore you tend to blah, 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 blah in relationships. And mostly they go like, yeah,
Right.
mostly meaning pretty much every time they go like, yeah, yeah, that's true.
Oh,
Or they, become distant or whatever. And all these things, the way things unfold can be seen through the characteristics of the signs and whatever happens in those signs, or the other way around, the characteristics of the objects in your chart, whichever you choose to look at. Some astrologers, they don't want to look at the modern planets. Um, okay, I totally get that. Others look at the modern rulerships. So I mentioned earlier that the planets rule over the signs. And at some point, the Theosophists decided to change certain rulerships because they wanted to incorporate the modern planets, which is the outer planets, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And they wanted to incorporate these planets into astrology and therefore assigned rulerships of, let's say, the sign Scorpio was assigned to Pluto, whereas it is traditionally assigned to Mars. That changes things, that changes your perspective. So depending on how you choose to see it, you will ultimately see different or slightly different things. And if you choose to incorporate every minor asteroid out there, you're going to get the 500 card spread, which doesn't exist, but you know what I mean. You get those 30 cards and it's like a cacophony. It's like everybody playing free jazz and you're totally confused. So that's something that you have to determine for yourself. What am I looking at? But at the end of the day, you're helping your client see things that they don't consciously realize.
Very good. Okay, so you've answered all my questions for me, all my outstanding issues,
Okay.
remarkably, I have to say. Now, how do people get a chart from you, and how do they contact you, and how do they not find out about you?
I have a website. It's called sunmoonself.com, sunmoonself as one word.com. And there you can see under the section called readings. So it's pretty obvious. You can see exactly what I do, what I offer, and you can contact me. You can write me an email. I currently only offer readings in written format, but that is actually a big asset because people can reread it as often as they want. It's very thorough, so you don't get, two paragraphs and that's it. You get a few pages. I try not to ramble. I don't ramble when I write. I ramble when I talk sometimes, but I don't, I just want to give them something to hold on to, reread as often as they want, and they can also ask follow-up questions in case they need to. So that's where people can sort of book me, sunmoonself.com. And I also have a Substack page, which is sunmoonself.substack.com. I hope I said that right. Yes, I did. And this is where I'm going to be posting starting July 1st, monthly and also other regular updates, a monthly outlook, and also updates for full moons, new moons, eclipses, Mercury retrograde, and what have you. And also my normal um, articles that I write about this, that, and the other, and a bit of educational, informational content. Also, not a full course, of course, but just so that people get a bit of an insight into astrology in case they want to learn more about it. If they don't, they can just use it as entertaining reading material. I try to be short and sweet with those, and I do my in-depth analysis. For example, the Keith Raniere person, whom I actually find fascinating. I find it fascinating how he got away with it for so long. But yeah, so those deep dives definitely are something that I'm really into. I also examined Elvis. I examined Priscilla, who I believe, okay, I'm gonna word this differently. There are people who believe she might be a psychopath. So, okay. And so I love those deep dives. So that's where I'm
Oh,
going
no,
into
I
those
like them too.
topics.
They're really good, the stuff you've written up on people like Marina Abramovich and the videos you've made and stuff. Yeah, brilliant. What I'll do is
So yeah, the website and Substack, that is basically what I would say is my most important stuff online. Sorry.
I'll put the links in the description box below and in the top comment, the pinned comment. So you guys know how to find her. You've no excuse now, okay? Don't be wasting your time with this airy fairy stuff in the newspaper. Get yourself a professional. And yeah, definitely. So thanks very much, Olivia, for all that. That was definitely demystified it from me. In fact, to the point where I'm actually kind of interested now, a lot more than I thought I would be. And yeah, brilliant. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much. Can I make a really quick book recommendation for
Do
people
whatever you
like
want.
yourself?
You do whatever you want. Yeah.
Okay, so it's just one book that I'm recommending. It's called Astrology Decoded. Astrology Decoded, a step-by-step guide to learning astrology by Sue Merlin Fairbrother. It's on Amazon and everywhere. It's really a fantastic book, easily understandable, no fluffy stuff. Yes, also modern perspectives, but very, very thorough, very competent, and easy to understand, really beginner friendly. So get this one if you really want to learn the basics of astrology without all the unnecessary fluff.
Great. Thanks very much, Olivia, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.